Josephine County Democratic Party. And we're here with Jerry Allen, and he's running for State Senate District number 2, the seat that covers, let's see, most of Josephine County, I would say, and quite a bit over in Jackson County. So it's covering what all Eagle Points and Central, a little bit of Central Point and
Rogue River,
Gold Hill, quite a bit over there in Jackson County, actually. And so, Jerry, we'll just start off with you. We'd like to spend a few minutes talking about yourself and what made you decide to run for this office.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me and for holding this forum. I appreciate it. And I'm going to start with something, a little ritual here. I, Jerry Allen, and with respect to everything running for office or holding office, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And the reason I'm saying that is because we need honesty in government, and we need it bad. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of a why I'm running talk here, and then we can go to questions. I committed to running for state senate because I was fed up with partisan bickering and rural Oregon often getting shortchanged. Unfortunately, soon after I filed for office, the coronavirus hit and the economy began to crumble, with thousands losing their jobs and livelihood. I'm concerned for our communities, our families, and our friends staying safe and finding work. So with that in mind, I decided to set aside the normal campaign efforts and instead to focus on providing information about assistance programs, safety, and what we should do to take care of ourselves during this time of crisis. Now, in addition to being a 5th generation farmer, some of those generations in Oregon, I was a hospital executive, clinic founder, social work supervisor, and 4-term elected financial trustee. I'm also a licensed emergency medical responder. I'm also an officer in the Fruitdale Grange in Grants Pass and a volunteer in the Josephine County Library. So I plan to draw on all of that experience in issuing the first issue of my newsletter, which is going to bring forward the best information I could find about explaining how to stay safe and where to get help. Now you can subscribe to that newsletter. I'm going to talk about some of it tonight, but there's a link that we will have available. But basically you can go to my Senate website, and that will have that newsletter on it, Jerry Allen for Senate website.com. And then you can also find it on my Senate Facebook page. So I invite you to check that out, and I'm going to be starting up Facebook Live town halls very shortly, hopefully within the next few weeks. And I invite you to watch that, to read the newsletter, and let me know of issues that you want me to address. And I'll research them, and I'll bring the best information I can to do that. So we're in a situation here where we have these 2 huge crises that are wrapped together. One is the coronavirus, and the other is the recession that is connected with it. And we have to figure out how to keep our people safe and how for people to find work, find unemployment, find help with SNAP for food stamp assistance, all of the different kinds of things that are going to be needed to help people survive. So that was why I put those things in my newsletter. And I'm going to be really pushing a lot of that information over the coming weeks and months, because I will just tell you frankly, I do not believe this is going to be over quickly. There are politicians who'll tell you, oh, this is all going to be settled within a couple of weeks. It's all going to be fine. We're going to be back to normal. That's not what CDC says. And that's not what the World Health Organization says. And if you look at the results in the other countries that have successfully worked with this virus, it goes on for a long while. And we need to be prepared that we may have to do these extraordinary measures for quite some time. So we're going to have a lot of work to do to keep ourselves safe and to keep our friends and our families safe. So that's my intro. And I'm open to questions or anything that you want me to address, and I'll talk about it.
Okay, thank you much, Jerry. Thank you for running. First off, I have not had too many Democrats running for office down here in Southern Oregon, and we do have quite a few running this time, and it's nice to see that people are actually stepping up and running. So thank you for that. Let's see. First question I had is sort of related to that, which is there's talk now by county commissioners of the rural counties in Oregon to try to open up Oregon again. And what do you think needs to happen for us to be able to safely do that?
There are three things that need to happen, and none of them is in place right now. The first is we need a lot more testing to be able to test the population more broadly so that we can really get a real handle on how many people are actually infected with that virus. We don't know right now because we haven't had enough testing. And it would be, in my view, folly to assume that there are hardly any because we've had very few negative or positive tests in Josephine County. At least there have been 19. And so, you know, it would be easy to assume, well, it's not a big problem here. But in fact, the CDC information is saying that many people are asymptomatic for a long time and may never show symptoms, but still be carriers and be able to carry that virus. So it would be very easy for us to have a secondary sort of an unflattening of the curve where the curve goes way up again, a second spike. I actually believe that that is very, very possible. I think that the second, but I'll get to the three things. The first one was enough testing. The second is to quarantine those people and to identify through contact tracing who they've had contact with so that we can get that group of people quarantined so they are self isolating and not infecting other people if in fact they've caught it. And so we have to have all of the pieces in place to do that, to do those things. Right now, we don't have enough test equipment. We don't have enough reagents. We don't have enough swabs. We don't have enough personal protective equipment for all of the people that will need to administer all of those tests. There are many pieces that, if you listen to Dr. Anthony Fauci from the federal program, there are many pieces that are still required in order to safely ease up on the social distancing and reopen the economy. Of course we want to reopen the economy, absolutely. But we have to do it in a way that doesn't boomerang and just lead us right back to to a secondary spike, which would be very, very difficult. And we are seeing those spikes start to happen in areas that thought they were going to escape this virus. Look what's happening in Idaho. Look what's happening in some of the other states that have not had a big problem yet, but it's starting to happen. So I think we need to be very careful and listen to CDC, listen to the people who are in charge of making sure that we operate that safely. Do you feel like there was any part of that question that I missed, Brian?
No, I was just going to say I'm amazed that we don't have more cases here in Josephine County from what I've seen, the way people are handling themselves around here. I posted the other day, I drove down 6th Street, I think it was on Saturday, saw probably 30 people walking the streets. 2 of them, I think, had masks on. A lot of people standing around talking next to each other with no masks. It's just a perfect environment for it to spread, even though we're not as packed in as tightly as New York City or something like that. People here just don't seem to believe it's going to happen to them. And like you say, with it being asymptomatic, you can have it and not know it and still be spreading it to all kinds of people. And they may have a different, attack them differently.
And I want to say to all of my Democrat friends, some of whom are on this listening now, we have to stay strong and vigilant on this, because if we see people around us not following it, we can't ease up, because we have to stay strong to be able to protect and serve. We need to be able to continue, even if times get rougher. I think they might get rougher. I hope not, but I think they might. So I hope everybody listening is really committed to these steps. Read my newsletter. If you need more information, go to the CDC website, get the information, and follow all those steps carefully.
Yeah, Jerry V had a good map of the 1918 flu, German flu, I think they called it. German flu, Spanish flu. Actually, I think it was the Nebraska flu is where it started. But
they had 3 spikes.
Exactly. The initial one was in the springtime, and then they had the huge one after Veterans Day, I believe, or I should say not Veterans Day. It wasn't Veterans Day yet, but on November 11th, everybody got together at the end of the war and spread it all over the place. And they had a huge spike after that. And like you say, a third one later on, I think in the next spring again. So we're not out of the woods.
And Brian, you know, there's a lot of misinformation floating around about the cost of doing these things, of the social distancing and everything that we're doing, the cost to the economy. I just read recently a very interesting article by Tomás Puello, where he pulls the research together from the Spanish flu, and he compares different cities in the United States and what they did. Philadelphia and St. Louis being 2 real examples. And the further west they went, they had a chance to get it right because they watched what happened on the East Coast. Philadelphia was late in imposing the kind of economic shutdown and social distancing, all of those things. They were late on it. St. Louis was early, and the virus or the flu ravaged Philadelphia and Pennsylvania a lot more than it did St. Louis. But when you go downstream and you look at the cost economically, the cost was high to do it, to do all the social distancing. But, you know, actually, those cities in the western part of the United States, from St. Louis all the way out to the West Coast, that were more early on shutting down, they did better economically later because they didn't have so many deaths, and they didn't have, they weren't ravaged by that flu as much. Actually, it was a cost savings. Now, when we're talking about lives, we're not just looking at cost, but it is a factor because we're hearing from a lot of people, oh, we can't afford to do this because, you know, we should just let the virus do what it's going to do because our economy can't afford it. That's misinformation. They don't have it right.
Hey, if you got more people left alive, you have more customers, right?
Exactly.
Well, and mass death and having hospitals get overrun is bad for the economy. I mean, and that study really shows that it's even worse for the economy than shutting down the economy. Yeah.
The guy is named Tomás Puello.
He has 3 different studies that are fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, those are really great articles. I recommend them to everybody.
Let's see. What are your ideas for rebuilding the economy once we're able to start opening up Oregon again?
Boy, that's a great subject. And, you know, I believe that here I'm using bad, I'm touching my face. Sorry, folks. Remember to not do that on a Zoom call. Don't touch your face, Jerry, because we're trying all not to touch our faces. So one of the things that we can really do to rebuild our economy, we have an opportunity here. It's a crisis that is also an opportunity. We can rebuild the economy in a better way, better than it was before. And part of that is a green economy. As we work on developing green industries, wind, solar, conservation, home insulation, all of the different things that we can do that are good for the climate, good for addressing the issue of the climate crisis, good for jobs, and good for our grandchildren. I call that a triple win. That's, we rebuild the economy, focusing on greener jobs, but also another element to that is we focus on relocalizing and regionalizing our economy. I believe that we and Republicans and independents all have an interest in the idea that we want our economy to be more local and regional. I know the figures from Josephine County. Josephine County sends between $2 and $4 billion every year to Wall Street in visa and mortgage payments and all of those things. And that's all sent to the Wall Street banks. Guess how much of that comes back here in investment? Less than 1% comes back here. Whereas if we encourage people to shop in local stores, then the money cycles. The research says it cycles 7 times before it bleeds out of the county. So what we do is we incentivize people to shop locally. Then that's going to improve local businesses. It's going to help them rebuild because they'll have customers. That in turn will rebuild jobs. So rebuilding is going to need to be local and regional, and it's also going to need to be supported by our legislature. So that's where I want to be a voice for rural Oregon so that we can work on that. And I want to be cautious here about one thing, which is the state is going to have a huge financial crisis at the state level because of the revenues going down from people spending less and doing less things. And I know we don't have a sales tax, but we have other kinds of taxes that are like income taxes that are related. So we have that, and then the state needs to spend a lot of money to deal with all of the issues that are going on. And it doesn't look like there's going to be anywhere near enough reimbursement from the federal government to really make the states whole. I hope I'm wrong. They've got some money in the new bill that was just passed at the federal level, but it's not nearly enough. So the combination of that plus a pension crisis that is going to happen, because if you look at Oregon PERS, and there you have some investments in the stock market, that is going to be a problem. So we are going to have to really look closely at what can Oregon do if we don't get enough help from the federal government. How can we as a state really be thrifty with the dollars and point them toward rebuilding our local economy? I would suggest that that is a task best done by all of us. Republicans, independents, Democrats, rowing the boat in the same direction.
By local. Let's see. We're going to move on to wildfires.
How are we doing time-wise?
About 10 minutes left.
Okay.
We've had a horrible wildfire smoke every year since I've lived here. I moved here in 2013, and except for 2019, it was some pretty miserable summers, every single one of them. What can Oregonians do to mitigate the threat of having this problem every wildfire season?
Right. That is, I know, a question that is about to get on everybody's minds again, as we're only a month or two away from fire season, and it's I'm part of the Illinois Valley Fire District as a CERT member, and boy, that Klondike fire was, and the one up by Merlin, it was just very, very scary. So I see this issue as hinged together with several others, and I'll talk about it for a minute. The fire situation, we live in a Mediterranean climate. There are about 7 Mediterranean climates in the world. We live here on the North Coast in one of them. And fire is a part of that. It's been a part of it for thousands of years. The indigenous people, the Native American people from this region, used what they've used in many other areas, which is cool weather burning of grasses to try in a mosaic. So you don't burn all the grass and ruin the habitat for all the wildlife, but you do it carefully, judiciously, to reduce fires. But instead, what we did over the last 200 years is we fully suppressed fire. So we end up with a huge out of balance. And then we also built housing out into the woods. So some of this is a long-term problem that we're going to have to deal with. But I want to tie this a little bit to the global climate crisis. Because if you look at the hotter and hotter and hotter ground temperatures in our region, that's caused by global warming. And when we have hotter ground temperatures, it's more easy to just start a fire just like that. A match falls in the wrong place, bang, you're into a fire, and they start very quickly. So we need to reduce ground temperatures. That means we need to address global warming, and that's a critical piece with the fire danger. Another piece with the fire danger is that the National Forest Service, which has a huge amount of the land, in Josephine County, only 15% of the land is arable land. The rest is all forest. The Forest Service has, guess how many trucks they have here for dealing with fire? One. That doesn't sound very good. And they contract out for air tankers and helicopters. Well, they're not doing nearly enough of that. So we are going to have to press the Oregon government and get the Oregon government to press the federal government to be prepared. Because what happened 2 years ago with the Klondike fire, we needed more air tankers. We needed a lot of those things, and they weren't available because they had already been contracted out and they were being used in the Carr fire in Redding and other places. We need forward-based contracting to get the equipment that we need here to be able to draw on it and put out fires. On that one time during the Klondike fire, we had 200 lightning strikes in one day. They put out 197 of them. The 3 that they couldn't get to became the Klondike fire, the one up by Galice, and the Natchez fire over past Tequilma. So it's absolutely critical that we get that equipment and be prepared. That also means we got to keep the logging roads open so that we can get the fire trucks down them. We've got to do all of those things. And as a legislator, as a senator, I will push that emergency preparedness issue very hard, as well as the issues of preparedness for earthquakes and other things that we are not nearly closely enough prepared for. So that's my take on the fires.
Yeah, that's another big problem, is that earthquake coming, huh? Come someday.
Well, 328 years since the last Cascadian subduction earthquake. They're supposed to come every 300 years. Well, I guess we're all knocking on wood that it doesn't happen yet, but we need to be strengthening our bridges and our hospitals and hardening of our overpasses. All of those things have got to get done. And we need a jobs bill, so why not get people to work fixing all of the infrastructure that needs to get fixed?
Yeah, and it sounds like if the past is any good experience for the future for us, we can't rely on the federal government to help us out very much, at least, especially if there's Republicans in the administration there.
Not right now.
Yeah, I'm switching one more time to campaign finance. Is your campaign taking large donations from outside of Oregon?
Oh, I'm sorry to laugh, but man, we'll take donations from people. We are not taking big donations at this time. We're taking very few donations at this time, and I've chosen not to focus on asking for money. I considered it one of the plans for running a campaign is you go out and you start drumming up money as fast as you can. And, we talked about it. We thought, it feels really insensitive to go out and start haranguing people for money when a whole bunch of them have lost their jobs. So what are you going to say? Well, I know you just buried your grandma yesterday, but can you give me some money? I think that doesn't quite feel right. So we've been really holding back. Fact is, you got to have money in order to run campaigns. So I certainly will be hoping to receive donations. $5, $10 a month. $10 a month would be until election day would be really helpful. And I've encouraged people to do that, and some people have donated, but it's been very small at this point, and I'm not taking any money from corporations.
Okay, and you have a link on your website, campaign website for that?
Yes, yes, we do.
Okay.
There's a little link there, and it automatically takes you to the questions that you need to answer to legally donate. You have to put your name and I think your occupation and I believe your phone number, but there's a link there for how to do it. And we have an organization that handles all those treasurer functions, so we stay clearly within the law on all of that.
Okay, we've got just a few minutes left. I wanted to open this up in case anybody out there in the crowd had a question for Jerry here. Dorothy, do you know if there's any written questions any place on the chat?
There are no written questions right now, but if you do want to ask a question, please unmute yourself at that time. I've been muting people as going along to not interrupt.
Yeah, if on these Zoom meetings, you have to mute yourself because you got a barking dog in the background. Everybody hears it.
Yeah.
Well,
Jerry, I have a question, and it has to do with taxing logs. Now, there's been an incredible amount of private sector logging that's been going on. Washington and California tax those logs when they leave the forest. Well, Oregon does not. And just some years ago, they got rid of that tax for who knows why. What do you think about reinstating a tax on logs that come out of that private forest?
well, I was talking with somebody recently that I'm not campaigning to win Progressive of the Year award here. I'm campaigning to win in a heavily Republican district. So I am always going to be very careful how I talk about taxes. And it happens to be what I believe, which is that I don't like to raise taxes. I don't think anybody enjoys paying taxes. And I don't want to see us raise taxes unnecessarily. But I want to say this about taxes, which is we all need to answer the question. If we're sitting as a senator in Salem, we need to answer this question. Is this tax necessary? Are we giving the people the best value for the dollar with this tax? What good are we trying to achieve? And is this the best way to achieve that good? So we need to always be mindful of being careful with the people's money. Now, the fact is, those trees have a value to our community, a lot of value. The tourist industry is a much bigger industry dollar-wise in this area than logging. So it would be cutting off our noses to allow clear cutting of our forests, and then you destroy the scenic beauty. How many people want to come here? So I think we need to really think through what we're doing. And in that sense, I think a tax on taking logs out probably makes sense.
Thank you, Jerry. Anybody else have a question out there? Okay, you wanted to just take a minute to wrap up, and then we'll move on to our second candidate.
I had some friends who were traveling through Kenya by Land Rover, and they tried to cross a river, and it was a very shallow river, but they came to a sort of a hole, and their vehicle dipped down a little bit. It grounded out the motor. So they were stuck in this river. It didn't look very dangerous, but all these people, Kenyan people on the bank, started yelling, "Harambe, Harambe," and they ran away, and they came back about 20 minutes later with ropes and about 100 people. They wrapped onto that vehicle and dragged it up out of the river. My friends said they were so thankful to them. And they said, "What is that word that you were saying, Harambe?" And they said, "Well, that word is the slogan of Kenya. And what it means is a work that is so important that we all need to join together to get it done." Mm. I believe that we're sort of in a Harambe here, where we really need to get it done. And I believe there's more that can unite us than divides us. And we need to work across the aisle and, from a bipartisan standpoint, get the people's work done.
Thank you very much for running, Jerry, and thanks for being here tonight, and good luck.
Thank you. And hello, Mary. I'll enjoy listening to your presentation as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Jerry.
We're going to switch over to Mary Middleton, who's running for House District 4, and Constance and Kevin Moore are going to be the moderators for that one, I believe. So Constance, yeah.
I guess that means you want me to unmute.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Brian. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jerry. Good job. Mary, you ready to roll?
Sure.
Why do you want Dwayne Stark's job? Gosh darn it.
That's a great question. Well, you know, one of the reasons and the main component of my campaign is Dwayne Stark has ignored the will of the people since May of 2014. He has had the opportunity to honor the genetically engineered plant ordinance bill that we passed at the ballot in May of 2014 and have been unable to enact and unable to enforce due to the seed bill. And there's a very easy legislative fix, and we took it to Salem and asked him to honor the will of the people here, because that was an initiative allowing Josephine County to protect our local farmers. And it was a talk about collaboration and talk about nonpartisan. It was a bipartisan. There were lots of Republicans and lots of Democrats and lots of progressives and all kinds of parties that worked together. It was a community-wide effort. And I was lucky enough to be the campaign manager for that, and I'm very proud of that. And since then, not being able to enforce it has been very frustrating. And to watch our elected representatives just not care about the will of the people has been very, very frustrating. So that's one of the reasons. Also, I'm an educator, and I've been teaching for more than 20 years. And I know that educators make very good legislators as a whole. And we've, you know, we know how to multitask very well in general. And we know how to read complicated issues and narrow it down to, you know, evaluate for what's best. I heard Jerry talking about, well, let's look at what's best for everyone, right? And so as a mathematician, as a teacher, as an educator, as a citizen, I believe I've got definitely some good qualities to bring to Salem. I like to tell a story when I introduce myself and talk about my candidacy, about being a young 2.5-year-old, and I was growing up in the Midwest, and my parents had they had a small property and a trailer, and I was the 4th child, and the oldest was 6.
Oh.
And we were living in a trailer. So mom and dad, you know, looked in the Sears catalog and ordered up a house and got it delivered. And on this one particular day, there were workers in the yard, and they were, you know, digging the foundation and doing what they needed to do. And I, you know, wanted to be out there watching what was happening. I wanted to be part of the action. And mom took me inside to give me a nap. I didn't want a nap. So I kept getting up and going over to the stairs, and mom and I did that dance back and forth a little bit, and she kind of got tired of that. And she was sitting on the couch, and she said, "Marianne, I don't want to see you on those stairs." And there I was at the top of the stairs in my 2.5-year-old brain. I didn't want to disobey my mother, right? But I also knew that I wanted to go down those stairs and out that door. So I said, "Mama, turn your head." And I was born, I believe, with determination in my soul. And if I set my heart on something, if I set my sights on something, I pretty much do accomplish that. And so I would like to take that determination to Salem, and I would like to represent Jackson and Josephine counties in House District 4.
Great, great answer.
Thank you.
Constance?
I didn't have a question really, but I think my main question for somebody trying to do what you're trying to do is two parts. How do you intend to garner the votes in this area to, you know, build bridges, which is what you have to do? And I think that's it. It looks like a hard hill to climb, and I wonder what you're thinking about that, how you pulled together all those different people.
Thanks for that question. It's a good one, and absolutely one I've been pondering. You know, I stand for education and access to education, and there's a lot of people who believe in education, who are educators in the district, and who have children in education. I teach at the community college level and have had experience at K through 12. I serve on the board for the Southern Oregon Education Service District, which is all about access to education for everyone. Community colleges in rural areas also are extremely important to keep funded and have there. Community colleges fund our workforce, which has a huge economic impact in the area. So those issues, as well as the ag issues I've mentioned. Farmers and educators are two very large groups in the area that can have a huge impact on my campaign. I do call myself a progressive, maybe viewed as a progressive. I'm endorsed by the Oregon Education Association, and I'm endorsed by Oregon League of Conservation Voters. So those two groups too carry a lot of weight. And, you know, we've all had to shift how we are going to run our campaigns, right? I should be knocking on doors right now, but that's not going to happen. And it's probably not going to happen for many, many months, maybe not even before November. I don't know. So I'm phone baking. I am right now, because the first thing to win is the primary, and I'm thankfully running unopposed in the Democratic spot. But I intend to do everything I can to engage the independent voters, the folks who are not affiliated with any party. And I also, you know, I'm a rural Democrat, which is very different from an urban Democrat. And I relate to the folks in this area. And I just intend to talk to people as much as I can, get the word out, and talk about the issues that I want to fight for.
Thanks.
All right, I'd like to shift gears, if I may, and ask you a question about mental health.
Okay.
Partly due to the area we live in, people are not as familiar with it, but the long and short of it is, in Southern Oregon, we have a tremendous continual shortage of between 30 and 50 master's level and above mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, psychologists, counselors, therapists. And it's particularly evident now during this pandemic. We're seeing folks have additional mental health stress going on, and there doesn't seem to be a solution. The folks that I'm familiar with in the mental health field in the area, this has been ongoing. We can't seem to draw the way the urban folks can to get these professionals. Do you have any ideas? And I know this is a cold question, but do you have any ideas on how to attract them? And believe me, I mean, the mental health organizations pay for people to come and interview. They move them here. They find jobs for their spouses, and it doesn't seem to be enough to attract enough people to deal with the load that we have.
Well, in those fields, you know, I don't have a lot of experience working directly with that, but I think that throughout Oregon and throughout our nation, you know, we need to realize that we have a population of citizens who, with mental health issues, and holistically, we have failed to address that, to properly address that, and to provide for things. We definitely have a shortage of affordable mental health care, right? Even if we had plenty of psychologists and psychiatrists in the area, the affordability of that for someone who's poor and someone who's homeless.
Correct.
Right. We have some agencies, and we shoulder them with a caseload that makes them completely ineffective. Right. And burnout in that field, it's my understanding, is really, really high. And it's because of what we are asking them to do, which is way too much, way too much. Yeah. And the marginalized communities need, the marginalized and the underserved need our attention. And I don't know of any other time in my life where that has been more evident than right now, right? The underserved and the marginalized have been hit the hardest with COVID-19. The ones who don't have access to healthcare, the ones who live in food deserts, right? We've heard about food deserts and healthcare deserts, right? They don't have access to either one of those things. And so, of course, they're catching it and spreading it more rapidly. And it's heartbreaking, the numbers that. So as far as solutions to that, we need to look at it more holistically and throw money at the problem, really. But where's that money going to come from? That takes a lot of care and effort and careful decision making.
Sure. We didn't really give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell you. Did you want a few minutes to just blab about yourself at all?
Sure. I can always do that.
Okay.
So my name's Mary Middleton, and I'm running for Oregon House District 4. I've lived here since 2011, and my wife and I own a home in Grants Pass. And the district I'm running for is parts of Josephine County and Jackson County. You can see my website is electmary2020.com, and I have a map of the district on my website because it's one of the most common questions that I get. Do I live in your district? Where's your district? What, you know, it's a little bit confusing because it's not one city or one county. It's parts of both counties, and it kind of hugs the I-5 corridor between the east side of Grants Pass and over to stops just before Medford. So it includes Rogue River, Weimar, Gold Hill, Central Point, Eagle Point, and White City are the main communities in there, and parts of Williams as well. I have been teaching for 20 plus years, and I grew up in the Midwest, and I'm the fourth of 6 children. And I like to talk about how I love to collaborate and bring people together. I got a question the other day about how do you listen to folks who you don't agree with? And it's a great question. But you start by listening and trying to find common ground, because there is always common ground. As a teacher, I love to get students excited about the subject that I teach, which is mathematics, but I also like to watch the students change and grow as they learn. It's really exciting to see a student, and then 2 years later or 3 years later, when they've got their degree, and just witness the change in their personality as they've learned and made decisions and accomplished some of their goals. And the pride in their faces when they get their diplomas is wonderful to see. And then it's even more gratifying 5 years later when you see them out in the field and they're contributing to society and feeling good about the work that they're doing. It's amazing. So I love education as a whole, as a field. and I love interacting with people in many ways. I became an advocate for farmers by volunteering on farms. I volunteered with an organization called WOOF, if you've ever heard of it, Worldwide Organization of Organic Farmers. And you can volunteer with that organization and spend time. It's got a website, and you decide what area you want to go to. And it's worldwide. I heard about it when I was in Thailand. I volunteered on farms in Northern California and in Oregon, and that's what led me to this area. I watched as every single organic farm that I visited, they needed somebody to bring money in outside of the farm. These small organic farms are no longer able to just be farmers, which is a big job. I don't know how much time any of you have spent, if anybody's spent any time farming. It takes a lot of time and a lot of physical effort and a lot of ingenuity, right? Farmers in general are really smart people, and they're fun to hang out with, but they work hard and they work long hours. And so I became an advocate for farming. And again, this sort of reset or this wake up call that we're getting right now with COVID-19, having us all sort of take a pause. In some ways, I think that I haven't really had that much time to pause because I work at RCC and we put all of our classes online, and it's been a tremendous amount of work to do that. And so I feel like I get up in the morning and I make some coffee and I go to my office at the back of the house and I start teaching and I start making videos and I start contacting students. And then all of a sudden it's like 7 o'clock at night. And I'm like, okay, did I eat in there? Did I have some water? It's been a lot of days like that. But it's really been rewarding in that teaching online is so very different, and you get that sort of individual connection with students more so than you do with the class as a whole.
Mary, as you may know, Constance and I are public school crazies. We
Yes.
absolutely love it. She actually is on the front lines working, of course, in a school. It's always been a passion of mine. And I'm glad you're talking about your teaching. I'm on the budget committee for Three Rivers School District, and I've been beating my head against the wall for over 10 years with other folks. And it's become obvious there's not a millage, a bond, a levy, anything at all that we're going to be able to pass. The voters here will simply just not vote for an increase in their small portion of property tax that they pay to support the Three Rivers School District. So I've begun to think lately, because we've got our budget meetings coming up, of perhaps the old saying, which used to be new, of looking out of the box. Do you see any other way of funding public education besides property taxes, and maybe this coronavirus thing and you having to do it online, and other teachers, and I know you guys are just working incredibly hard, but maybe reaching out some other way to fund public schools, because it's not equitable. Our kids suffer tremendously for not having the same advantages that a kid in, I won't mention any names, but Portland suburbs, for example, that have a whole lot more resources than their voters do, in addition to the apportionment part. As I'm sure you're familiar with, everybody sends it up to Salem, they back out to us, but that doesn't stop a local district from adding on more. And some of those districts that have a friendly voter base to public education have tremendous programs that we don't have. So it's in all areas, academics, athletics. It's not fair to our rural school kids here. And I wondered if you had any ideas along those lines.
Well, I think that in general, I agree with you that it's not fair and it's not equitable. I think that the way that we fund schools in Oregon by predominantly using property tax benefits creates inequities, right? And this is not the fault of the wealthy neighborhoods. It's the fault of a system that was set up to fail, right? And so rural Oregonians and poorer neighborhoods end up with lesser than schools because there's lack of funding. So I think that if we normalize school funding in a way that would more, be focused on equity and rather than focused on the price of the homes in the area, right? I think that we would have a better educated public. And I don't know that that's necessarily a novel idea, and I don't have all of those details worked out. But it seems to me that the system itself is set up to create inequity.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wonder about our hemp and marijuana production here, if there's something that we can do with tax revenue, or I don't know very much about it. I wonder if you do, but it seems like there's a lot of money. And if there's some way of dealing with that, or is that something that you would deal with at the state?
Well, I want to be careful. I'm running for office in Jackson and Josephine County, so I'm not suggesting new taxes. I am not suggesting new taxes. Just had to say that twice. But I think that Senator Bertschiger actually went after trying to tax marijuana sales, and that is, a lot of the sales are not necessarily happening here, but this is where most of the hemp and marijuana production is happening. Most of it, the highest counties with the highest number of farms is Jackson and Josephine counties. And so he went after that, and I don't remember the details on how that ended up. I'm sorry. I don't know
either. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, there should be a way to capture some of that revenue because it is one of the major crops in the area. And it does seem like a lot of the money is leaving the counties, right? It's not benefiting as much as we could.
Right.
As it could, potentially. But it's something to look at.
I don't have another question, Kev.
I'm sorry. It just said something about I was unstable. I thought it was me, but it says the internet was unstable. But it's funny because I am unstable. I wouldn't be surprised if my computer said, "Hey, you're unstable." But anyway, I'm not sure that's a technical thing. Okay, Mary. I guess just maybe as a kind of a wrap up here. What you first started out talking about, and that is how to garner votes when the deck is stacked against you, and which of those voters can and will make a difference. Maybe just if you were talking to, and I know you answered this partially, but if you were talking to an independent voter who is kind of sick of both parties, and there aren't a whole lot of them. People seem to be kind of aligned one way or the other in our area, but there are a number that are, and officially, that are non-affiliated voters, registered as such. What would you say to them about why you would be a great representative to represent them in Salem?
Well, I would ask them a lot of questions about their dissatisfaction between the two parties, because there's lots of reasons. We can name them. We can name them about the Democratic Party. We can name them about the Republican Party.
Sure.
And try to figure out what their issues are and find common ground. You know, I'm an educator. I'm educated. I am focused on access to education and economic impact in the community. You know, I work at an institution that is focused on community partnerships. And I personally go out of my way to support the local economy in any way that I'm able to. Rather than order online, I find it locally with whatever that may be, whether that's, you know, a half a cow from the local rancher, or it's, you know, a shirt or, you know, a vest or whatever. I look to our local economy to be vital and vibrant. And what we're going through right now is going to hit all of our small businesses very hard. And I'm disgusted with how the federal money has been mishandled. And I've talked to several small business owners who've put in for small business loans and haven't heard back. And they are,
Hello.
yeah, you're one of them, Kevin?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're playing that game. It's
Right.
one of those, I
Right.
believe it
And
when I see
you
it.
guys are hotel owners, and I'm sure you're sitting there empty, right? And what are we going to do to take care of our small business, our local small business? And how can we, you know, stop the focus on corporate success in the United States as a whole, right? That's not helping our local, you know, bottom dollar by allowing corporations, multi-million-dollar corporations, borrow 3.5 million, right? That's not helping. That's not helping your hotel. That's not helping the local restaurants. That's not helping any local business, right?
Right.
So I would talk about those kinds of things, and I would ask them, you know, what they want. And, you know, I believe in transparency. I believe in honesty and integrity. I do what I say, and I say what I do. And we need more leaders who are going to do that. And I think I've got a great shot at beating Dwayne Stark in November.
I do too.
I'm the first chance at a choice since 2014. That's 6 years, right? They didn't have any choice. And how undemocratic is that, right?
Oh.
Somebody running unopposed, and Josephine and Jackson County, well, I don't know about Jackson County, but Josephine County in particular has a history of having folks just run unopposed.
Sure.
And that's not democracy. In a democracy, we all have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to stand up for what we believe in and to participate and to monitor and to educate, right?
Yeah.
Be part of the solution rather than to just not be.
Can you challenge Dwayne to a debate, Brian? Could we get a debate on here somehow? I think Mary would kick his butt.
You're muted, Brian.
Oh, Brian's muted. Okay.
I think that we should open it up to the chat room in case anybody else has questions. Because we're just about at the end of the time.
Anybody else have questions? We haven't gotten anything on the chat line.
Go ahead, Jerry. You're unmuted.
Okay, Mary, I have a question. How critical do you believe it is that we have Democrats in this region do a big push for getting out the vote?
Oh, it's very critical. We need it. You know, we need Democrats to all show up and be part of this. And we need the independents who are Democratic leaning to show up and be part of this. And it's hugely critical. In my district, the independents outweigh any other affiliation, right? It's like 40% independents and 35% Republicans and about 22 Democrat, right? So without the independents, I would not win, right? But they're not all going to vote for Dwayne Stark.
No.
And
No.
yeah.
Okay, now,
Hey.
now I've clicked the right button, okay?
Okay.
Just want to say that we've been doing that here. We've been reaching out to the NAS. We've had a huge postcard writing event going on. We've sent out, how many, Jerry? 7,000 plus postcards, I believe, to non-affiliated voters here to educate them about the need to register with the party if they want to vote in the primary here. And it's going to be tough, and we're on a whole new world here, and we don't know what we're going to be able to do between now and the election, the main election, in terms of getting out to canvass or anything. That may all be put on hold.
Well, I want to say thank you, big thank you to Jerry D. She's done awesome work, and to you, Brian and Linda, and all of you who are putting in work in the Democratic Party. We need your voice. And, you know, I think that Jerry has a great shot at it too. And if the two of us get elected, here's the thing. We become part of the majority, not minority, majority. And we can get some stuff done, right?
Yes.
That sounds. I'd just like to point out, because we're finding that a lot of the NAVs and independent folks that are registered independent, now that Biden has become the Democratic nominee by default, or he's got it in the bag, that many of them
Presumed, Jerry.
Presumed, thank you. The word was not coming to me. A lot of them are saying, I'm just going to vote in November, not taking into account these races like Mary's. Well, Mary's not running challenged, but taking into account the Secretary of State and the Congressional District 2 and Congressional District 4. And so for those of you that still have friends that are on the fence or haven't changed their registration, the 28th is the deadline. And if you can do anything in your power to try and help convince those folks how important it is for those other races to register as Democrat and participate in the primary that's coming up next month, they have a week or less than a week. I think it's 6 days now to get that registration changed. And it's not just about the presidential election. And people just seem to forget about these down ticket races. So I hope that those of you, and almost everybody in this group participated in some way or another in our Project Engage and getting out the vote. So thank you all for that. But it isn't over. We still have a little bit of a week left. So hopefully we can do that.
And you know what's coming after that? Neighborhood leaders.
Yay. Such a great program.
Those are the ones to get out the vote. So anybody here, you know, drop us a line, you know, go to our website, sign up for Neighborhood Leader. We are getting it. We've just ordered regular old Neighborhood Leader type postcards of voting, of just getting out the vote. So those will be coming next week, and we're going to start getting that going as well. We've also started changing the website to get away from changing your affiliation for the, you know, highlighting the presidential race, but highlighting all the races, and are beginning to create a slate card. So anybody that wants to, you know, take a look at josephinedemocrats.org, go to the election section, and give us some comments and feedback. And Jerry, I know we need some information from you, as I mentioned at the beginning.
Dorothy, I think Charlotte had a question.
Okay.
I did. Hi, sorry. I'm painting. But anyway, my question is, can we do this week and kind of open it up for people and start inviting more and more folks to listen to Jerry and Mary? And what do you think? How do we get the word out? Related questions.
Well, Charlotte, we have set up several of these talks, almost one every week with various candidates. We've got next week we've got Dan Mancuso for a half an hour, and then Jamie McLeod Skinner for a half hour. Then after that, we've got the District 1 Democratic candidates. I think though that we do and they're both from Roseburg, but they kind of covered the very northernmost part of Josephine County and then down to Cave Junction. And they are amazing people. They would be wonderful in Salem. So, and so Mary, I did want to ask you, would you be up for debating Mr. Stark?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Hey,
let's see if we can make that happen.
yeah.
And
Barbara
can I-
has a question.
Charlotte's point, a lot of the candidates, I haven't talked with Mary about this, although she and I have talked about a lot of different things. But a lot of the candidates, both the CD2 candidates and Jerry's going to be starting this within the next couple weeks, are doing these Zoom town hall meetings. And so with Indivisible, we're trying to get those posted, and we can also, for the Democratic candidates, post those on the JOCO Facebook page as well, and certainly forward and share those kinds of things with all of the different candidates.
You know,
That's great. That's
I was
great.
going to piggyback on that idea because I just posted on our Indivisible page the Wasco County interviews with the CD2 candidates, because it's an enduring thing. You know, like you guys just did all this great work, like listening to Jerry and listening to Mary talk, and all these these great scripts, even in the, you know, well, I'm assuming they're scripted because I couldn't come up with that spontaneously, but all these great answers, all these great solutions, all this knowledge, but it's only shared with us. And so, which is great, but if it were a video we could post, I don't know how much interaction they'll have, but I posted on the CD2 candidate interviews. I posted those on Indivisible. So it'll be interesting to see if those get any engagement. But that might be an idea.
Dorothy?
By the way, this particular one is being recorded and will be posted on the Dems website
Oh, good.
tonight, by tomorrow.
And can we pick that up and share it too?
Sure, why not?
Perfect.
Sure.
Can you send it to the Josephine County Republican headquarters?
Nice.
Send it.
I'll let them pick it up.
I'm just a troublemaker. I'm sorry.
Well, I want to thank you guys for inviting me. This was wonderful. And thank you for all your work. And thank you to everyone who came.
Thank you, Mary.
It's always good to hear you, Mary.
Yeah, well done, both of you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yep. Thanks, Jerry.
Nice